Shalom family, this is your brother Ra'el from ReYahnited Soul coming to you with another video on my Moshaic Law series, laws number 139 through number 175 regarding forbidden relations. And by forbidden relations, it is referring to specific sexual relations that is not allowed by the Most High. So let us nourish our soul with scripture that we may reunite with the Most High, the Elohim of Yisrael. All scriptures will be read verbatim from the King James Version Bible. Now let's get right into it. For those of you that have been following the Moshaic Law series, welcome back. And those of you who are newly tuning in, welcome to the series. And you can find the complete introduction to this series if you start with laws number 1 through number 23, the fundamentals of Torah. In this discussion, I will state the number of the law, a description of the law, the scripture assigned to the law, and identify when applicable laws that are duplicate, laws that we are not currently able to observe, and those that are merely religious traditions and not commanded by the Most High. I will be covering laws number 139 through number 175 regarding forbidden relations, which is quite a bit of material. Now let me forewarn you, it will be naive to think that some of these forbidden relations are too far-fetched to even consider possible. That no one would dare involve themselves in such relations or have the desire for such relations. At least not those that you know and love and trust. Please be advised, brothers and sisters, that the porn industry highly promotes forbidden relations. Let's be very clear, there is nothing off the table, forbidden or even sacred when it comes to the porn industry. The dark side of human curiosity that lures millions of people to it is real. And it is readily available to them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And who are these people? It is the man down the street, your best friend, your coach, your teacher, your co-worker, your elected officials, your next door neighbor, your relatives, even family members living under the same roof, who will not be corrupting themselves to be certain are those who wholly follow the Most High. Not those who merely look the part or those who can memorize scripture, but those who wholly follow the Most High, obeying his laws, statutes, and commandments. So without further ado, let's begin with law number 139, not to have relations with your mother. The scripture assigned to this law is Leviticus chapter 18 verse 7, and I read, "The nakedness of thy father or the nakedness of thy mother shalt thou not uncover. She is thy mother. Thou shalt not uncover her nakedness." Law number 140, not to have relations with your father's wife. The scripture assigned to this law is Leviticus chapter 18 verse 8, and I read, "The nakedness of thy father's wife shalt thou not uncover. It is thy father's nakedness." Law number 141, not to have relations with your sister. The scripture assigned to this law is Leviticus chapter 18 verse 9, and I read, "The nakedness of thy sister, the daughter of thy father, or daughter of thy mother, whether she be born at home or born abroad, even their nakedness thou shalt not uncover." Law number 142, not to have relations with your father's wife's daughter. The scripture assigned to this law is Leviticus chapter 18 verse 11, and I read, "The nakedness of thy father's wife's daughter, begotten of thy father, she is thy sister. Thou shalt not uncover her nakedness. Laws number 143 through number 145 shares the same scripture. I will state the number of the law's description, and read the scripture assigned to these laws. Law number 143, not to have relations with your son's daughter. Law number 144, not to have relations with your daughter. Law number 145, not to have relations with your daughter's daughter. The scripture assigned to these laws is Leviticus chapter 18 verse 10, and I read, "The nakedness of thy son's daughter, or of thy daughter's daughter, even their nakedness thou shalt not uncover, for theirs is thine own nakedness." Laws number 146 through number 148 shares the same scripture. I will state the number of the law's description, and read the scripture assigned to these laws. Law number 146, not to have relations with a woman and her daughter. Law number 147, not to have relations with a woman and her son's daughter. Law number 148, not to have relations with a woman and her daughter's daughter. The scripture assigned to this law is Leviticus chapter 18 verse 17, and I read, "Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of a woman and her daughter, neither shalt thou take her son's daughter, or her daughter's daughter, to uncover her nakedness, for they are her near kinswoman. It is wickedness." Law number 149, not to have relations with your father's sister. The scripture assigned to this law is Leviticus chapter 18 verse 12, and I read, "Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy father's sister. She is thy father's near kinswoman." Law number 150, not to have relations with your mother's sister. The scripture assigned to this law is Leviticus chapter 18, verse 13, and I read, "Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy mother's sister, for she is thy mother's near kinswoman." Law number 151, not to have relations with your father's brother's wife. The scripture assigned to this law is Leviticus chapter 18 verse 14, and I read, "Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy father's brother. Thou shalt not approach to his wife. She is thine aunt." Law number 152, not to have relations with your son's wife. The scripture assigned to this law is Leviticus chapter 18 verse 15, and I read, "Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy daughter-in-law. She is thy son's wife. Thou shalt not uncover her nakedness." Law number 153, not to have relations with your brother's wife. The scripture assigned to this law is Leviticus chapter 18 verse 16, and I read, "Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy brother's wife. It is thy brother's nakedness." Law number 154, not to have relations with your wife's sister. The scripture assigned to this law is Leviticus chapter 18 verse 18, and I read, "Neither shalt thou take a wife to her sister, to vex her, to uncover her nakedness, beside the other in her lifetime." Laws number 155 and number 156 shares the same scripture. I will state the number of the law's description, and read the scripture assigned to both laws. Law number 155. A man must not have relations with a beast. Law number 156. A woman must not have relations with a beast. The scripture assigned to these laws is Leviticus chapter 18, verse 23, and I read, Neither shalt thou lie with any beast to defile thyself therewith. Neither shall any woman stand before a beast to lie down thereto. It is confusion. Law number 157. Not to have homosexual relations. The scripture assigned to this law is Leviticus chapter 18, verse 22, and I read, Thou shalt not lie with mankind as with womankind. It is abomination. Law number 158. Not to have homosexual relations with your father. The scripture assigned to this law is Leviticus chapter 18, verse 7, and I read, The nakedness of thy father or the nakedness of thy mother shalt thou not uncover. She is thy mother. Thou shalt not uncover her nakedness. Law number 159. Not to have homosexual relations with your father's brother. The scripture assigned to this law is Leviticus chapter 18, verse 14, and I read, Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy father's brother. Thou shalt not approach to his wife. She is thine aunt. Now at this time, I would like to point out that the scripture for law number 157, not to have homosexual relations, states mankind, which is all men. There is simply no need to specify in law number 158 and number 159 the father and the father's brother. So please note that although worded differently, these two laws can be considered redundant because they are covered by the previous law number 157. Law number 160, not to have relations with a married woman. The scripture assigned to this law is Leviticus chapter 18, verse 20, and I read, Moreover, thou shalt not lie carnally with thy neighbor's wife, to defile thyself with her. Law number 161, not to have relations with a menstrually impure woman. The scripture assigned to this law is Leviticus chapter 18, verse 19, and I read, Also thou shalt not approach unto a woman to uncover her nakedness as long as she is put apart for her uncleanness. At this time, I would like to point out with laws number 162 and number 163 that I will omit the words non-Jews and Jewish and use the word non-Yisraelite and Yisraelite. Now, some people may say Israelites, but we know that the Most High's name is not in that name as well. Law number 162. Not to marry non-Yisraelites. The scripture assigned to this law is Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 3, and I read, Neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son. Law number 163. Not to let Moabite and Ammonite males marry into the Yisraelite people. The scripture assigned to this law is Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 4. However, for better clarity, I will start at verse number 3, and I read, An Ammonite or Moabite shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord, even to their 10th generation shall they not enter into the congregation of the Lord forever. Because they met you not with bread and with water in the way, when ye came forth out of Egypt, and because they hired against thee Balaam, the son of Beor, of Pethor, of Mesopotamia, to curse thee. I found this law interesting because it specified not marrying Moabite and Ammonite males. Now, without specifying males, this could cause confusion if we look at the story of Ruth, who was without doubt or contradiction a Moabite woman. And still that may actually leave some scratching their heads at law number 162, not to marry non-Yisraelites. Please understand that when the Most High delivers an enemy into the children of Yisrael's hand, only then is it permissible to marry a captive woman of that defeated nation, according to Deuteronomy chapter 21, verses 10 through 12. Moab was defeated by our biblical ancestors. Thus Ruth married into the tribe of Yehudah, or some know as Judah. Whether you choose to take issue with marrying outside of Yisrael, we must accept that there are certain conditions where it is permitted. However, it is not difficult to understand that making covenants and marriages to the very people that rule over, oppress, and afflict our people is not permitted. For those of you who are interested, you can learn what happened to our biblical ancestors in the book of Ezra, chapters 9 and 10, when they came out of Babylonian captivity with their strange wives. Now, moving right along. At this time, I would like to point out with law number 164, I will omit the words convert and Jewish people. In law number 165, I will omit the word convert. I already explained about the letter J, but as far as the word convert, the Most High's people are simply not a religious institution seeking converts for membership. I will, however, use this term stranger that is used in Scripture instead of convert. And for more information about the stranger, please take a look at my video discussion, Strangers That Dwell Among Us. I will place the link in the description for your convenience. Laws number 164 and 165 shares the same scripture. I will state the number of the law, the law's description, and read the scripture assigned to both laws. Law number 164, don't keep a third-generation Egyptian stranger from marrying into Yisrael. Law number 165, not to refrain from marrying a third-generation Edomite stranger. The scripture assigned to these laws is Deuteronomy chapter 23, verses 8 through 9. However, for better clarity, I will start with verse 7. And I read, Thou shalt not abhor an Edomite, for he is thy brother. Thou shalt not abhor an Egyptian, because thou wast a stranger in his land. The children that are begotten of them shall enter into the congregation of the Lord in their third generation. When the host goeth forth against thine enemies, keep thee from every wicked thing. Thou shalt not abhor an Edomite. Oh boy. Abhor, of course, means to disregard with disgust and hatred. So, brothers and sisters, we're not to do that to the Edomite. And this is just not the King James Version. I know many of our brothers and sisters going hard talking about the Edomites. Third generation Edomites, however, come on now, brothers and sisters. We got to be obedient. Let me go ahead and put you in remembrance of what thus saith the Most High according to Isaiah chapter 55, verses 8 through 9, and I read, For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. Okay. Everybody good? Let's keep it pushing. In this next law, I will omit the words the Jewish people and replace it with Yisrael. Law number 166. Not to let a mamzer marry into Yisrael. Mamzer being someone born from forbidden relations. The scripture assigned to this law is Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 3, and I read, An Ammonite or Moabite shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord, even to their 10th generation shall they not enter into the congregation of the Lord forever. Just to refresh your memory, the Ammonites and the Moabites descend from the incestuous relations between Lot and his 2 daughters. After the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, as well as the death of Lot's wife, his daughters got him drunk and laid with him in an attempt to preserve his seed, thus producing people who shown hostility towards the children of Yisrael, which are the Moabites and the Ammonites. Again, I will omit the words the Jewish people and instead use Yisrael. Law number 167. Not to let a eunuch marry into Yisrael. The scripture assigned to this law is Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 2. However, for better clarity, I will start with verse 1, and I read, He that is wounded in the stones, or hath his privy member cut off, shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. A bastard shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. Even to his 10th generation shall he not enter into the congregation of the Lord. I would like to expound on the word bastard for just a moment, because it is a derogative term that is not commonly used in our modern vernacular. And the meaning in regards to the younger generation may have been lost. So let's go to Merriam-Webster to define it. Bastard. 1. Usually offensive. A child born to parents who are not married to each other. 2. Something that is spurious, irregular, inferior, or of questionable origin. 3. An offensive or disagreeable person. In many settings where the term bastard is used, normally derives from a male child that is not claimed by its father, or when the mother of said child does not know who the father is. That would fall under the second definition of questionable origin. And why does this matter in relation to our biblical ancestors? Simply because, according to Numbers chapter 1, verse 2, the sum of the congregation was based on the house of their fathers. So you can see where not knowing a child's father could be problematic, especially when there are restrictions of permitting certain nations into the congregation. That is the reason for Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 2. But I digress. Law number 168, not to castrate any male, including animals. The scripture assigned to this law is Leviticus chapter 22, verse 24, and I read, Ye shall not offer unto the Lord that which is bruised, or crushed, or broken, or cut, neither shall ye make any offering thereof in your land. Now, here we come to the first law of this discussion, where the assigned scripture does not support the law's description. Leviticus chapter 22, verse 24 is referring only to male animals without blemish or lacking in parts being used as an offering to the Most High. not at all referring to the castration of a man. Therefore, law number 168 should be considered religious tradition. Laws number 169 through 174 pertains to the Levitical priesthood. Law number 169, the high priest must not marry a widow. The scripture assigned to this law is Leviticus chapter 21 verse 14, and I read, "A widow or a divorced woman, or profane, or an harlot, these shall he not take, but he shall take a virgin of his own people to wife." Law number 170, the high priest must not have relations with a widow even outside of marriage. The scripture assigned to this law is Leviticus chapter 21 verse 15, and I read, "Neither shall he profane his seed among his people, for I the Lord do sanctify him." Law number 171, the high priest must marry a virgin maiden. The scripture assigned to this law is Leviticus chapter 21 verse 13, and I read, "And he shall take a wife in her virginity." Laws number 172 through number 174 shares the same scripture. I will state the number of the law's description, and read the scripture assigned to these laws. Law number 172. A Kohen must not marry a divorcee. Kohen meaning priest. Law number 173. A Kohen must not marry a Zonah, a woman who had forbidden relations. Law number 174. A Kohen must not marry a Chalala, party to or product of laws numbers 169 through number 172. The scripture assigned to these laws is Leviticus chapter 21 verse 7, and I read, "They shall not take a wife that is a whore or profane, neither shall they take a woman put away from her husband, for he is holy unto his God." Last but not least, we come to the last law of this discussion, where if any forbidden relation with a woman was missed, this would most likely cover it. Law number 175, not to make pleasurable contact with any forbidden woman. The scripture assigned to this law is Leviticus chapter 18 verse 6, and I read, "None of you shall approach to any that is near of kin to him, to uncover their nakedness. I am the Lord." So there you have it. Laws number 139 through number 175. The laws regarding forbidden relations. I do find it encouraging that many of our people are already abiding by a good portion of these laws without even knowing that they are commandments from the Most High. And to think, if our people were actually familiar with what the Most High commanded us to do, we would be that much more closer to keeping the covenant we have with the Most High and taking our rightful place on this earth, which is being the head and not the tail, being above and not beneath, being the lender and not the borrower, being a holy nation, the nation above all nations upon the earth. Man is simply incapable of leading our people into our inheritance. This can only be obtained through the Most High who promised it. We can do this, family. I hope to see you on the next Moshaic Law series. If you feel that the content of this discussion was useful and would like to provide moral support to this channel, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this video, or just share a few words of encouragement in the comment section. Your moral support is greatly appreciated. And whether you agree or disagree with the content of this discussion, feel free to express it in the comment section as well, where we can learn more from one another. With that said, always keep your trust in the Most High. Love Him with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. See to it that your household is in line with the word of the Most High as best you can. I thank you for taking the time to watch. Again, I am Ra'el, your reunited soul brother. And with that, I say to you, Shalom.